Alright, so it's spring break and I'm getting some stuff done around the house because that's what I needed to do on spring break. I'm super busy with school and don't have a lot of time to get stuff done. So what's happening right now is I'm fixing this Chevy lean business that's going on with my S10. So the first thing you need to do is support the crap out of it with 2 jack stands like I have here. Get it as high up in the air as your jack will allow, because you're going to need that lower control arm there to swing down and out of the way. By the way, I'm not using a spring compressor, so that's why I mentioned that fact. The next thing you want to do is remove your shock. There's a bolt on the top that comes out right here, a little nut, 2 bolts on the bottom, and that's just going to slide right out. Get that out of the way. The next thing you want to do is pop your lower ball joint so that your lower control arm will come out. So I'm going to work on that right now. So I really can't see this camera angle, so I don't know if you can even see what I'm talking about, but I'm going to try to explain it. Alright, the first thing I'm doing before I remove the shock or anything else is get this ball joint out of here. The way you do that is there's a pin in there. Use a pair of needle nose pliers to manipulate that pin, get it out. Next thing you do is pop it loose. I used a really big extension and a 24mm socket to loosen that up. Now what you don't want to do is try to pop this ball joint out of here with this nut completely off, because when it pops out, the spring is going to go crazy, every part's going to go flying, not good. So leave this nut in place while you're popping that ball joint. There's a couple different ways to do it. You have a ball joint separator such as this one, or you have the one with the air impact wrench. I'm going to try to use this one first just because I don't want to turn my compressor on. I'm being a little lazy. So you're going to place this in the ball joint like so, and then start beating on it with one of these super big sledgehammer. And that was it. The ball joint has been separated. And the next thing I'm going to do is put my jack underneath this lower control arm, remove my shock, and then go ahead and finally remove this nut here to allow everything to swing out of position and let the spring come out of the pocket. Alright, so I've got the shock out. I've got the ball joint separated. I actually even undid the sway bar end link as well to just kind of give me some extra space if I needed it, or allow the arm to come down a little further, I guess I should say. So now I'm going to attempt, excuse me, sorry, a lot of pollen today. I'm going to attempt to go ahead and lower this down and see if I can't get that spring to pop out of there. Gently, of course. You don't want to just let the jack down quickly, because that spring is under a lot of pressure. And you don't want to let that pressure all out at once. Let's just let it down nice and slow. And let the pressure come off that spring. Alright, it looks like the ball joint has come out of the way. Actually, it looks like the spring is pretty much out at that point. Yeah! That's what I'm talking about. Actually, it seems to be wedged in there a little. I'm a little nervous sticking my hands up in there. There we go. Alright, so the spring is out. The next step is to go ahead and cut some of this coil off. And when I read online, it said that for every half a coil you cut off, you get an inch drop. So a half a coil being from this point to this point. So instead of having the spring in right here, it would end right here. So that's what I'm going to go with on this spring, because I measured on the front side, it's exactly 1 inch lower on the right, or on the left than it is on the right. And in the back, it's a little bit over an inch, but I'm going to go ahead and start with just 1 inch and see how that works. I'm just going to grab a Sawzall and cut it off right there. this bad boy cut, the next step to do is put it back in the truck. So, one of these caps is going to go on the top and one's going to go on the bottom. I'm pretty sure this came from the bottom. The part that I cut was also on the bottom as well. So I'm going to put that part back on the bottom. And the difference is, I think, is that the top part is more flat, it seemed, when I took it off there than the bottom was. So that's how I'm going to put it back in. Oh boy, here we go. This little rubber piece wants to fall out and all that jazz. Might be a good idea to take a little piece of masking tape and wrap it around here just to kind of keep that in place as you're putting it back in. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so make sure you get that situated back up in that pocket. Get the upper part up in the pocket that it belongs in. And then take your jack and put tension back on your spring. Now as this is coming up, you want to be certain that everything is going back where it needs to, which actually I've already got it too high for that. What I mean by that is you want this to go back in the bottom of your ball joint socket there, and you want this piece to go back into your sway bar link. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, put everything back together, remeasure everything, and see if I've got this right. I'll let you know. So, this is going to suck, but just want to let you guys know what's going on. I put everything back together, checked the truck, rolled it up and down the driveway, and found out that the truck was actually sitting higher on the right side than it was before. So I can only assume that the problem is in the way that the spring was situated in the lower control arm and the upper control arm, possibly. There's a bucket that goes in the center of the coil of the spring here, that you kind of have to center it on that. So make sure that gets pushed up into that first, and then down on the bottom side, I've found on instant4up.com someone who said that the end of the spring, which is this part, I can't even really get in there. The end of the spring right there needs to sit between these two holes. And actually, if you look at like the dirt marks, I don't know if you can see them, on my truck, it's nice and clean right here and not so much right there. So that would assume, I would assume that that's because the end of the spring was right there, creating contact and didn't really give any chance for any dirt to get in there or anything. So I'm going to put it back together like that and see if it works this time. I'm hoping so, because I do not want to have to take this back apart again. Okay, so after wrestling with that spring a lot longer than I should have and doing it the stupid way, the best advice I can give you is to go rent a spring compression tool, because that is probably going to be the best way to do it. I was able to get the spring back in there after completely unbolting the lower control arm, positioning the spring where I wanted it, jacking the lower control arm up, compressing the spring, and then wrestling it to get the lower control arm bolts back in and all that. It was a real pain in the butt. It wasn't very much fun. I probably should have just went and got the tool. But what I will say is after that, I do have everything put all back together. Went and drove it around the block, measured it, and it's now only 1/4 of an inch off instead of a full inch from the left to the right. So it's still not 100%, but it's better than it was, quite a bit better than it was. And actually it looks like it lowered the entire front end quite a bit. I don't remember the exact measurements that I had before I started this. I probably should have written that down, but it looks more like I've got a more level drop than I had before, because before it looked like the rear end was lower than the front end, and now it looks like it's pretty much the same. So I'm happy with the result. It was kind of a pain in the butt to do. It took way longer than it should have, but it looks good and it's done. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, press the like button. I've got about 180 other videos on how to do things, you know, from the S10, Corvette. My wife has a Civic, I work on that, and many other things as well. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. Appreciate it.